Welcome to episode 654 of the Entertainment 2.0 podcast, brought to you by thedigitalmediazone.com. I'm Josh Pollard.
And I'm Richard Gunther, and I'm wondering why Josh is laughing right now. This is the show that puts you in control of your favorite movies, music, shows, and games. No time for banter. We have all kinds of feedback. We need to get to it. How did people send it to us?
Well, I'm going to encourage them to go to YouTube to find out why I was laughing at you. It was because you were clearly not ready for us to start recording. We're not looking at the camera, and I'm just like waiting. And you're looking at me like, why aren't you starting? So that is the call to action to go to YouTube, subscribe to our channel, and you can leave comments over there also. But most of our feedback comes to our email inbox, entertainment20 at thedigitalmediazone.com. And we do have a few to get through this week. So first off, longtime listener and friend of the show, Skoondoggy, wrote in to talk, really a couple of times, to talk about Sonos. And I'm going to summarize this a little bit. So the first one is he shared a link to a really, really well-written article about what happened when Sonos attempted to make this app and their testing process and all of that stuff. And it's really good. So we're going to put a link to that in the show notes, but we probably don't need to go through all of the other complaints and all of that with the Sonos app anymore, because we'll actually be talking about it more later in the news. But
yeah, we will.
Unfortunately. So he did have one other interesting question for us, though. He said, as the two of you are involved with app and user experience development, how do app developers scope a project where they are relying on a network/environment that they have no control over? As far as I can see, there are no defined standards that all home routers need to conform to. Does Sonos need to invest more resources in network test analysis functions in their app? I have to wonder if Sonos beta test pool is diverse enough. So that's the question. As app developers, how do we handle getting an app ready for network ecosystems that we don't control? I'll start here, Richard. All of my real professional experience is in building web apps. And it's not the same sort of situation that Skoondoggy is asking about there, because it's not specifically handling people's networks, because it's not code that is only running on a single person's home network. But I think there are some similarities there, because as a web app developer, I do need to ensure that the web app has a good experience, regardless of how good the internet connection is. You know, when we're writing web apps on our local computers and developing them, we have no latency. Maybe even if we're deploying them to a testing and staging environment, we still have an incredibly fast and stable internet connection, and it loads really fast. But that's not how it works on everybody's phones, especially when they're on a mobile cellular network. So we do have to take things like that into consideration, and have to take things like, well, what if they were using the app and then they drove into a tunnel and lost internet access entirely? So there are certainly things that you have to plan for in web app development like that, in terms of how you're going to cache things, how physically, like in terms of megabytes, how big is the actual website being downloaded to the person's device, so that if they're on a slow network connection, it still works. There's a lot there, but it's not the same sort of experience. Richard, what about you? Do you have experience in this sort of environment?
Not really, although I'm going to correct you a little bit, because you may forget since it's been so long, but we did work on a local application that ran on PCs.
You're right.
To control the Insteon modem.
Yes.
And that worked over your home network. So I think this is an interesting question, But I don't know that I agree with the premise that there are no real standards that the networks need to conform to. I mean, Ethernet and the Wi-Fi versions that are out there are, in fact, a standard. And while there's a whole bunch of nuance to that and all the different aspects of networking that play into it, and that some routers do better than others, and meshing severely complicates, it all has to work to a certain spec.
Right.
So at the very least common denominator level, as a developer, I feel you should be targeting that basic spec, and maybe not depending on advanced things that may or may not be adopted by every router out there. I also think this is a problem that Sonos created for themselves by deciding that they weren't going to run their own network anymore across their devices through their hardware. Instead, they were going to rely on Wi-Fi. They strategically made that decision and have started eliminating their own wireless network from new devices that they're releasing. So they created this problem. And frankly, I feel like the Sonos network was far more reliable before it had to deal with Wi-Fi. So I don't know that I feel so bad for them about this.
I don't know. I think that most companies probably would have made the same call. Like, it is hard to also support your own standalone wireless network when you don't control the physical environment either. You know, if you live in a brick house that or a house that has masonry all throughout, like, there's no, Sonos doesn't have a Sonos network repeater that you can install.
But that's not really true. They did have bridge devices that would help you get across long distances and deal with interference in the home.
They did?
So, yeah, they did.
Oh.
They were not widely known about or used, but they existed.
Okay. Well, shows how much I know.
But I don't know. I get your point. It's hard to do it your own way, but it's the same reason that I believe that devices like for the smart home, for example, that run off of Zigbee or Insteon or Z-Wave or whatever, that isn't actually your Wi-Fi, is a better solution, because it's keeping the traffic, which is often kind of heavy, off of the main artery for information in your home.
Right. Yeah, I guess I don't know enough about how they implemented it to have a super solid opinion on this, because it's still like they still require an internet connection, because like, although I know many of them offered Ethernet ports that you could plug into to alleviate that concern also, but I don't know. Like, there's also the argument. You need to be able to
communicate with the local libraries. You need to be able to communicate with the streaming services. Obviously, you need to be connected to the network at some point. Yeah. Right.
But the other argument that I suppose is in the favor of their decision is, like when I'm working with my software teams at work, we regularly remind them when they're like, oh, I want to make this custom logging library or something like that. Well, that's not what we're paid for. We are paid to make these websites that solve these specific problems. And Sonos, not really in the business of network hardware. They're in the business of making speakers that connect to a network that will play you music.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you on your login thing. I don't know that that's a complete analog, but I get your point. I get your point. All right. Well, we need to move on because we have more feedback, and our next message is also from Kevin. So I'm going to summarize this a little bit, but I'll read the beginning here. He says, I appreciate your feedback on the Sonos headphones. I've never understood the demand for Sonos to make headphones. It appears they introduced headphones as Sonos customers were asking for headphones. But I think Sonos customers wanted something much different than what they received. In my mind, there were two use cases, and he outlines two very specific use cases that I don't necessarily know that I considered this specifically. But the first one he mentions is a scenario where you have playlists, you have your own music, you just want to play it right to your headphones. You just want to use the app and play your stuff to your headphones. You can't do that. Can't do that with this system. It's not designed to work that way. The second use case he identifies is a scenario that I can totally relate to for people with any sort of hearing issues, that in addition to having your home theater or your television set up with an ARC or some sort of Sonos soundbar, maybe you have problems hearing things through the normal speakers accurately. So you might want to wear your Sonos headphones and get that same experience, but in an immersive way, while others in your family or in the room are watching it and listening to it through the normal speakers. That's a really cool use case that I never really thought of. Yeah, you can't do that either. So the way that it works is it basically takes over the audio and you're no longer listening to it from the speakers that are in your room. So he mentions that if you had one of their devices like a Connect or a port that has the amplifier in it, that you could use wired headphones or Bluetooth headphones to do the same sort of thing. And yet their own device doesn't support these sort of things. So yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand what they're doing with these things, but apparently people are sort of liking them. We'll talk more about that later.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then let's move on to our last couple of messages. These are pretty short. Gary writes in to say, if you're looking for an audible pick, that's a keyword there, audible pick, this is a really good one for those listens that will delay getting home for, or maybe just his taste is lousy, he says. So it is a series called We Are Legion, and then in parentheses, We Are Bob. And it's by an author named Dennis E. Taylor. It is sci-fi, so that's automatically something I'm going to be a little bit more interested in, probably. Key here, though, this is Audible only. You know, we've talked about Audible exclusives before, that they're a thing. I didn't know of any of them before. Now I've got one that I could potentially listen to. So if you're an Audible subscriber, Gary thinks that you should listen to We Are Legion, We Are Bob. We'll have a link to it in the show notes.
From the cover alone, I assume this is sci-fi-ish.
Yeah.
And I totally appreciate his analogy isn't the word there, but his way of describing this. NPR calls those driveway moments. You don't want to get out of the car yet because you're so engaged with the content.
Yes. Thank you for explaining that. Yeah, exactly. Well, and then the other message that we got is from Tim, and he says, hey guys, I'm just wondering if you've seen this before. And this, in this case, is a new universal remote from SwitchBot. Have you by chance seen this, Richard?
As a matter of fact, I have. It's on my side table next to where I sit in my family room. So I'm going to be talking about this a little bit later.
Awesome. I'm very much looking forward to hearing your take on potentially, maybe, a Logitech Harmony replacement.
Don't get your hopes up.
Oh,
spoilers.
Don't do that. You gotta, I'm going to have to edit that out. We got to get people listening to the end of the show, Richard. Sheesh. Okay, so let's get into the news before we talk about what you have no idea what you're going to hear about regarding that remote from Richard.
Right.
So let's talk this feels like huge news to me, Richard. So Google finally, after 4 years, has announced a replacement. Yeah, this is a replacement for the Google TV with Chromecast, I believe is what that device.
Chromecast with Google TV. But I can understand why you might mess that up. It's a mouthful.
Oh my gosh, yes. So replacing the most recent Chromecast dongle streamer with a new device. It's new in many ways. It's not a dongle. This is a ovalish shaped box that's like
Lanty. It's a set front box. They say you're supposed to sit this in front of your television.
Right. That's where my soundbar is, or my center channel speaker.
Right.
That's
this
not
is
where
not
it's going
in front of any television in my home.
It will go on the shelf below the speakers,
maybe
in my entertainment center, but not directly in front of the TV. Okay, so what is it? Because what I have been waiting for is a device that could finally put my 8-year-old NVIDIA Shield TV to bed. It has served its purpose. It deserves to be retired at this point. And I think we might finally have that, Richard.
Maybe.
This thing looks pretty great. So it is more of this box sort of form factor, like we said. It has way more storage, way more memory, and a faster processor, and like a lot more storage. The Chromecast dongle thing had 8 gigs of storage. This has 32 gigs of storage, which is like
much better.
Like if all you're using this for is as a streaming device to load up every single streaming app that you might want, 32 gigs is going to be more than enough.
Yeah, and 8 was not. I mean,
right.
I had to unload some apps on my existing Chromecast devices to be able to load others. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's crazy. You should never have to do that. It also has more RAM. It has twice the RAM of the original, of the previous Chromecast. It has 4 gigs of RAM. That Chromecast had 2 gigs. You might be wondering, how does that compare to the NVIDIA Shield Pro or that On Pro 4K streamer that I've been using as my daily driver lately? Those both have 3 gigs of memory. So this is even more, which should really prevent you from having a slow and laggy experience when switching between multiple apps and things like that. The processor is also supposed to be faster, but it's kind of a new processor and there aren't really a whole lot of specs out there about it. But considering everything else they've put into this, I'm going to bet that this processor is plenty beefy for whatever it is that you're going to want to do with a device like this.
Yeah.
And then on the back, it's got an HDMI port. It's got gigabit Ethernet, another thing that the Chromecast dongle didn't have. You had to use weird adapters and stuff to get Ethernet. And it uses USB-C for power.
It's interesting they mentioned the HDMI port is future-proof. So that suggests to me that they have some way of upgrading it with firmware?
I don't know. Like the idea of anybody calling an HDMI port future-proof is completely laughable to me. HDMI has had so many different revisions.
Yeah.
It's sure. Okay. If you want to call it future-proof, I guess. Maybe that's just because I really don't know what they're thinking calling it future-proof. They'll come up with something that will make it not future-proof. So one of the cool things about this USB-C port is you can plug a USB-C dock into this, like you would use a USB-C dock with your laptop or with your iPad maybe, where you would then plug your power cord into this dock and then plug other things into your, I almost called it an NVIDIA Shield, but this new Google TV streamer, like big external hard drives or game controllers. So this does seem like it has the power and the capabilities to truly be a replacement to the NVIDIA Shield, because if you can attach hard drives to it also, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to run a Plex server, run a channel server, things like that, right off of this device, like we can do with the NVIDIA Shield.
Yeah, and with USB-C, these docks that you're talking about, we're not talking about these like $100 things that you used to have to buy for a laptop. Nowadays, you can get a USB-C dock for like $30 or $40, and it has a whole bunch of USB-C ports on it, and sometimes some memory chip slots and stuff like that. So they're readily available.
Exactly. So all of that sounds great. There are. Do you want to talk about the remote? Like you really care about a remote, Richard. Let you talk about the remote before I get even nerdier about some of these use cases.
Yeah. So the remote, I think, is a good evolution of the existing Chromecast with Google TV remote, which is I guess I would call it like a half pipe, if you will. The back is completely rounded. The front is cut straight across. And it has, I don't know, maybe like 9 buttons on it. It feels like it's not enough buttons. It always feels like it's not quite enough. So they added a button. They added a programmable button that you can make do a bunch of different things like open apps or switch inputs, stuff like that. They also added some texture to the back, which was much needed because this thing falls off the arm of my sofa all the time. So oftentimes it would be falling on the floor or it would fall on the cushions and I couldn't find it. And they have a good solution for that now too, because they've added a remote finder to the system. So there's a button on the streamer and a little noisemaker, like a beeper or something inside the remote itself. So it'll help you find that remote when you do lose it, which, let's face it, is inevitable with something this small.
Yeah, that's a feature that they have on Google TV 4K Pro, whatever thing. And we use it regularly.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah. Because the remote is tiny and they do get lost really easily. Yep. And that one is not textured, so it does fall off the couch and then, rolls under the couch or the ottoman. So
right. Now, the good thing about that remote, though, is that remote for the on device has a little bit of friction to it. It's not quite rubberized, but it doesn't feel like slick plastic like these remotes that come with the Chromecast are. And I expect this is going to be another like glossy plastic thing. So I'm glad they're adding some texture to the back. That's going to help a lot.
Yeah. So one other thing, and this, I think, is a little bit more interesting, a little bit more of a niche use case. So with the Amazon devices and with the Roku streaming devices, they also have whole ecosystems of speakers that you can pair directly to the streaming boxes and use instead of like a standalone soundbar or, God forbid, the terrible speakers inside of your television. None of the Google-based devices, the Android TV devices, the Google TV devices have ever supported this, despite the fact that Google has their own line of speakers. They're now Nest speakers. They've been called different things in the past, but their TV streaming devices have never supported pairing directly to a Nest speaker to use the Nest speaker as your TV speaker, or like in place of a soundbar. And unfortunately, that's still true. So that sucks. But the good thing is, and this has been a constant frustration of mine since I've been using the NVIDIA Shield TV, is I've got this device hooked up to the best speakers in my house. And it's a Chromecast. And yet, with every previous device, you have not been able to add it to speaker groups inside of the Google Home ecosystem. With this device, you can. So I can finally make a speaker group that's all the downstairs speakers in my house. And that'll be the little Google Hub thing in my kitchen and the giant speakers in my living room, like all of them. I think it's kind of a big deal, maybe I'm the only one who's been wanting that, but it feels like a big deal to me.
So I'm a little confused about that. You're saying that because your Chromecasting device is connected to good speakers in your living room, that now you'll be able to include those in it. If you have this device, you'd be able to include those in a speaker group with your other Google casting speakers that you have around your home.
Correct.
And it would do that through the streaming box.
Yeah.
And you don't need to have the TV on or anything, right? It's just leveraging the audio. How would that work?
I imagine the TV would still need to be on.
Because it would have to pass through, right?
Yeah. Because
unless
in my case, I'm using
pass
HDMI
through without power. And sometimes that's possible.
That's true. So maybe it wouldn't. I won't really know until I get my hands on one of these. But I would imagine it would require my TV to be on, which is fine.
Yeah.
Then the other last thing, the thing that brings this in line with one of the cool features about the Apple TV is that this also becomes an actual sort of form of a smart home hub in your house, because it has a Thread radio in it, which supports the new Matter standard, which is essentially using Wi-Fi or this other Thread protocol over a different radio to be a more universal way of doing smart home devices. And we won't get into all of the details there. If you're really curious about that, we've got a whole other show for you to listen to called Home On, where Richard talks about those sorts of things. Maybe he'll even do a special episode for this. But this does work as that sort of hub. In the Matter ecosystem, they would call it a Thread border router. That's what this is, because it has both Thread and Wi-Fi.
I completely missed that.
Yeah.
I need to lose points for that or something.
No kidding. I can't believe you missed this. So the last two, maybe the most important details: when can you get it and how much will it cost you? September 24th, $100. It's by far the most expensive Chromecast we've ever seen.
Yeah.
But it's cheaper than the NVIDIA Shield. It's significantly less expensive than an Apple TV 4K. It's basically the same price as the higher end Amazon and Roku devices. I think the Roku device is actually $110. This feels right to me.
Yeah. No, I think it's the right price. I think so. One thing that we didn't mention here is that this is the new direction for Google as far as Google TV is concerned. Chromecast is done. The Chromecast brand is going away after the devices that are already out in the market or in channels to sell are gone.
So I think we do need to clarify what that actually means, because that's what every article out there says is Chromecast is dead, blah, blah, blah.
Well, it's not dead.
But it doesn't mean that you're no longer going to be able to cast from your phone to your TV.
Yeah. Chromecast as a brand for devices is gone. And the Chromecast concept, where you have these little dongles that you cast to, they're not going to make them anymore. Instead, they're doing these streaming devices now. Now, I think killing Chromecast, because it competed with Google TV, and because, frankly, it was a very different thing than Google TV is today, is a good idea. But at the same time, I do feel like these dongle devices solve a problem that these boxes do not. And that's, what do you take with you on vacation? I have to carry a whole streaming box with me now instead of this tiny little dongle thing that I could plug into any TV without needing a Surface to put it on and everything else. I think that's a mistake to abandon that form factor completely.
So is that what they mean, that they're completely abandoning dongles?
They're not doing dongles anymore.
Huh. I agree with you. Like it seems like there is still a place for dongles, and maybe it's in the lower spec things, because if you're in a hotel TV or something like that, that TV is going to be trash anyway. So it doesn't matter if you have the best streaming device ever. You just want easy access to your content without having to log into a bunch of different services on some strange random, foreign device that isn't yours, that you then have to remember to log out of, and all of that craziness.
Yep.
That's unfortunate.
So how excited is your wife going to be that you're going to be buying yet another new streaming box?
So I told her this last night when I saw the news. I'm like, we're going to get a new box for the living room. And she's like, are you serious? I just learned how to use the new one.
Well, the good news is it isn't changing.
Right. I was like, the user interface is going to be basically identical. And even the remote is not very different. It's not very different at all. It has the power button. It has the volume buttons that work. It even has the little star button that you can reprogram, just like we're using with the on Google TV 4K Pro. I'm never going to remember the name of that. Like,
don't worry about it.
If you thought I couldn't remember Chromecast or Google TV, there's no way I'm ever going to remember the name of that thing.
I have no idea if this is true or not, but it would be interesting if you could use that remote with the new Google TV device. I mean, in theory, I would expect that they would be compatible. Now, there may be reasons why they don't want you using it.
Yeah.
Because it might not have the same branded buttons on it that Google's decided to have on theirs. But still, I think that would be worth trying if your family is really attached to that weird new remote.
It is a little weird, but it's fine. It does the job. And a Sharp Dressed Penguin in the chat is talking about how he's still using a TiVo 4K dongle. And it's interesting to me that he brings that up, because one of the reasons I want to buy this new Google TV device is I want to take that on streamer and move it to my basement, because I've been using the TiVo 4K down there. And the kids just told me, yeah, occasionally we're watching and the screen just goes black for a few seconds. I'm like, well, does the Xbox do that? Nope, the Xbox is fine. Okay, then it's not the TV. It's just the crappy TiVo.
Maybe. I mean, it could also be your HDMI port, but
I bet my HDMI port is future-proof.
Nice. Nicely done there. All right, we should move on. We have a lot to talk about.
We should. Well, we can make this one especially short. So we've been talking for a few months about the conglomeration of many sports entertainment providers like ESPN, ABC, Fox, Max, all of them getting together to make one Uber service for live sports streaming. It's called Venu, Venu. We've known essentially what sorts of content will be available on it. The big thing that we've been waiting to hear is, how much is this thing going to cost? And now we finally know. A subscription to Venu Sports will set you back $42.99 a month. And just as a quick recap, so what does that actually get you for your $43? ESPN, and this is like live ESPN, Sports Center, all of that. ABC, Fox, Fox Sports 1, Fox Sports 2, TNT. That feels like just about everything. It's not quite everything, because NBC is not on board and CBS is not on board.
Yeah, and so those are big ones for sports, right? That means you're not getting March Madness, because CBS still does that.
And CBS is the other main player for Sunday afternoon football.
Ah, okay. Yep.
Yeah.
And NBC, of course, the Olympics, and I have no idea what else.
Some racing. They have IndyCar.
Okay.
And I think maybe some other kind of niche-y type sports. So it's definitely not everything, and it never was going to be everything, because like you look at the NFL, like now there are going to be games on Amazon and Netflix, and like it's kind of bananas. So this feels like as close as we were ever going to get to a service that's going to get you almost everything. For $43, I think this is good if you're somebody who likes a lot of sports. If you're only into one or two niche sports, then maybe it's not the right answer for you. And it's going to make me need to check to see how much Sling TV is, because I do like to have ESPN in the fall and winter for college football, because most college football ends up being on ESPN. And like the national championship games and the bowl games are pretty much always on ESPN and not ESPN Plus. So, but that's all I really care about. Like, I don't need most of the other stuff that shows up on all of these other channels. But if you are a multi-sport fan, or you just love sports, that's all you ever want to watch is sports, you can't really go wrong with this bundle, because even if you try to go the cheaper route, like with Sling TV, then to get all of this, you'll need to do the Sling Orange Plus Blue, which ends up being more expensive than this as a whole. So if all you care about is sports, then do this. But if you need any of the other things, then you are probably still going to be looking at things like Sling, DirecTV Now, Google TV Now. Google. Oh my gosh, YouTube TV is the service that I'm trying to say. So coming soon. It's supposed to be here in time for the NFL. Last I checked, preseason games start like next week, so they better get a move on here.
How are you going to consider this? I mean, you said you want to look into Sling, so are you doing an actual comparison that you might consider getting this?
Oh, for sure. Like, because of college football. So this is not something I would be subscribed to year round, because in the summer, I don't watch any sports really. Because I'm pretty much only watching hockey. Right. I'm pretty much only watch hockey and football. Football is done by February, and hockey is done. My God, it was almost July this year, but hopefully it'll be a little bit earlier next year.
By the beginning of summer, usually?
Right. So we'll see. And frankly, I'll probably at least do the 7-day free trial just to check it out.
All right. Interesting. All right. Well, if you just have ESPN, you just subscribe to ESPN Plus as an example, I have bad news for you. Your service is going up again. So Disney just announced, after reporting that their streaming services are now making a profit. Yay! So they're going to raise prices again. So,
I mean, making a profit's good, but making more profit is better.
Well, right. Apparently. So we had a price hike last October. And before that, we had one the year prior in August. So in the last 3 years, we'll be seeing 3 price increases. This seems like a regular thing now, unfortunately. This year, the prices are going to go up in October on the 17th. So when your billing hits that, then you're going to be up to the new prices on this. And this affects all of their individual services and most of their bundles. And you can see my notes, so you can probably guess the answer to this, Josh. But how many different bundles might you think they offer with these 3 services?
I don't know that I would have even guessed as big of a number as it actually is.
Yeah,
like
ridiculous.
I probably would have said like 6 or 7.
Right. No, it's 11. There are 11 different versions of this bundle of Disney Plus and Hulu and ESPN. We're not even talking about Max. Just Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus. There are 11 different combinations of 1, 2, or 3, and with or without ads between all of them. It's insane. Absolutely insane. So the prices are going up anywhere from 5 to 25% for most of these bundles that you can get, or the individual services. 9 of the services and bundles are going up somewhere between 5 and 25%, depending on what it is. Typically, if you have one service, it's only going up like $1 or $2. If you have two services, that's when it's usually going up the most. The good news, and there is good news here, is that if you have one of the two all-included services, which is Disney Plus and Hulu and ESPN, either with ads or without ads, those prices are not going up. They are not changing. So the most that you are going to pay is the most that you're going to be paying today, which is $25 if you have everything with no ads. That's the good news. The other good news is that they haven't eliminated any of the month-by-month options. So if you want to pay monthly, even though those services that offer an annual price is going to get you a better rate, if you want to pay monthly, you can still do that, which means that you can cancel it at any time when you're not using it. And as we always encourage people to do, and I never do, you should do that.
I don't know why I'm just now thinking of this, Richard, but because I agree, like we are always telling people they should cancel services.
Right.
So I don't pay yearly for any of, well, that's not entirely true. I did there was a deal for Max for like 6 months or something. That made it super cheap for.
And didn't you do
Black
the initial
Friday or
Disney
something.
thing when it first came out too?
I did.
I did.
I think so. But this is the bundle that would actually make sense for me to just pay for yearly, because we're not canceling this. Like, we're always going to have this bundle, because at the very least, we will always want Disney Plus and ESPN Plus. And then if you do the three-way bundle, you're basically getting one of these services for free. So you should just do the three-way bundle.
Yeah, no, I still think that is the best deal that they offer. And remember, there's this weird Disney deal that you can do through Walmart now with Disney and Paramount, if I remember correctly.
Oh.
No, I need to look into that to see what that was about, because there was something I wanted to switch to that was basically going to end up getting me most of what I already have and want. And I was going to save some money there, because it lets you pay on a monthly basis and still end up getting a really good price for that. So anyway, pay attention to our deals. I should pay more attention to the deals that we talk about, because they save you money. Anyway, all this comes on the heels of them increasing subscribers by nearly 250,000 users, 200,000 new users in the last quarter, which is great. They're making more money. It's finally profitable. And frankly, that was one of the big things that was dragging the bottom line down at Disney. And one of the big reasons that they ousted Chopek.
Right. Well, seems like they're starting to figure things out over there.
Yep. All right. So that's Disney. Let's move on to audio news. We mentioned that we're going to talk about Sonos. This isn't really great news, and I appreciated you holding back from talking about this last time you recorded, Josh, because I obviously have thoughts on this, because I'm a Sonos user, and I've been railing about the new Sonos app, and I wasn't optimistic about it. Imagine that. I wonder why. This company has such a great reputation improving their applications. Oh, wait, no, it never does. So a couple of weeks ago, their CEO, Patrick Spence, sent a letter out apologizing to the world. Open letter. We messed up. I'm so sorry. We didn't meet your expectations. And the groveling continues. In their earnings call that just happened, he talked about how they dramatically underdelivered what their customers expected, and he owned it. He said, I pushed the team to work too fast, and as a result, we didn't catch stuff. I might argue that as a result, they made bad decisions, but they're definitely taking steps to solve this problem now. Now, when he published the letter a couple weeks ago, they also published a roadmap of what they're going to be doing over the coming months to get the app back up to snuff. And that includes anything from fixing major problems that they've identified, like connectivity and things like that. Just like being able to see your speakers, just simple stuff like that.
Why would you want to do that?
Right. To adding features back that they, for some reason, decided weren't important enough to release with. Now, the scuttle on this, if you haven't already heard it, is that the reason they pushed the app out was because they needed the new platform that the app was designed around to support the headphones. So they pushed the software out to be able to push out a product that most of us are scratching our heads about. But for some reason, a bunch of Sonos users were clamoring for. Apparently, that wasn't an artificial demand. They say that their earnings got an unexpected boost from the new headphones because they hadn't been doing well this year. And the new headphones, the new product out there in the market, helped their revenue and in fact, helped them turn a profit in the last quarter. Now, it's interesting to note that the headphones came out on the 6th of June. And most products have a 30-day return window. The quarter ended at the end of June. So I'm really curious what the next quarter's revenue is going to look like when that return window closes.
Ooh, spicy take.
Yeah, I mean, I know people who got them and returned them. So, yeah. Anyway, they're trying to make good. They're trying to fix this. They, in fact, said that they are not going to release 2 hardware products that they had ready to go out by the end of the year, specifically so that they can have all eyes on and all attention focused on getting the app up to snuff. So, good. I don't understand why this guy still has a job. They just had a stockholder meeting. They could/should have voted him out. I don't understand why the CEO still has the job.
Yeah, there's just been so many problems. Like if it was just the headphones or just the app, but maybe even just both of those, but it's been so much more than that.
Yeah, or just the outage that we had earlier this week. I mean, it's crazy how badly they're executing right now. I don't understand. He's owning up to it, then hold him accountable and get someone in there that can do the job.
Well, and maybe they're working. I don't know. Like, I guess you don't have to have a great replacement to let the guy go, I guess, but maybe they're interviewing already, but haven't found a replacement, so they haven't let him go yet.
Let's hope so. Full disclosure, I own shares in Sonos.
Okay, well, that is actually all of our news this week. We're gonna not a whole lot going on in the gaming world this week. I think Gamescom is next week. Huge show in Germany. Really the biggest. Even when E3 was around, Gamescom was the biggest in terms of number of people showing up for a video game conference. And Xbox is going to be the major player at the event this year. So there could be some big announcements there. So once Gamescom actually hits, I would expect some news out of that. But, late summer, a little dull in the gaming space as we wait for all of the big stuff to happen in the fall. So maybe next week. So instead, let's jump into what's going on in our entertainment centers.
All right. Well, I've been spending a lot of time in my workshop because that's where my 3D printer is, and that's where my laser engravers are. Yeah, I did say plural there, didn't I? So I'm increasingly wanting a TV in there. And I wisely made the decision to not share my desire to buy a TV for my workshop with the public.
Or me specifically?
Because the last time that I did that, I got shamed from my plans to buy a cheapo $150 TV into instead buying a Samsung frame TV for my office, which, in all fairness, I love.
Right.
But I don't need a frame in my workshop.
No, you don't.
I needed a cheapo 42-inch television to slap up on the wall while I'm working on stuff, to 42, play YouTube videos.
And now I am shaming you. 42.
So 42, because that's the space that I have. It's literally a space between two closet doors on the wall.
Okay.
And so I can't go any bigger than that. So I have a 42-inch television that I paid roughly $150 for at Home Depot. It's a TCL Google TV. It's fine. Can I see the pixels? Yes. Does it bother me? Sort of. But it's in my workshop. Is it underpowered? Oh, you bet it is. But it's in my workshop. So it really doesn't matter. I hooked it up this weekend, got a wall mount for it. It's a little bit too high because of where it is, but I'm usually standing in there anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. And I was able to work on my engravers and on my 3D printer this weekend while watching the Olympics 4-Up on Google TV. So I was loving that. Now, I wasn't loving the sound from the crappy TV speakers that you referenced earlier. So I decided I want to hook this into my Sonos speakers that I have in my workshop. This should be easy. I have a couple extra connector devices like an old Kinect. I have a port. I have one of the amplifiers. I should be able to do something to connect them and get it to work with my speakers. So I pulled out my old Sonos Kinect. This is the relatively small box that has nothing more than an input and an output, and then a connection to your network. And it essentially allows you to put any input into the network or into the Sonos system, and also output to speakers that have some sort of amplification of their own. I don't need that part. I just need to get sound in. So I go to connect it, and wow, that was a hassle. Oh, by the way, new app. Did we talk about that at all?
I thought there was no chance this is working in the new app.
How much does it not like hooking up the old devices?
Right.
So I had to upgrade it to S2. Remember, there was the old app, and then there was the newer old app, and now there's the new app. I had to at least upgrade it to the new system, S2, and then it needed firmware upgrades to, I don't know, to do something. And it crashed during the upgrade because, of course, it did.
Oh, no.
So I had to do a couple system resets, and then I had to look up, well, what happens if it's completely unresponsive? Because no lights were coming on. It was completely unresponsive. And apparently the answer was plug it in and hook it up to Ethernet and then do nothing. Don't try to turn it on, do nothing, just hook it up to Ethernet, and it'll eventually come back to life and download something that'll make it work again. And lo and behold, it did. So
wow.
A couple more system resets, and I finally got the thing hooked up. And now whenever I turn my TV on, the sound goes out the headphone jack into my Sonos Connect and through my Sonos speakers in my workshop. And it's glorious. I love it. So I can hear the roaring crowd of the Olympics through all directions in my workshop.
That sounds like hours of your life to get that all working, but the result sounds pretty great.
Yep. Totally. Totally worth it. All right. Now, I mentioned that I have been using or trying the new SwitchBot Universal Remote. I think the best way to describe this is I've been trying to use. I originally bought this when it first came out because I thought, $40, why not? Give it a try. It's claimed to control your AV system and multiple appliances in your home. Why they use the word appliance, I don't understand.
It controls my refrigerator, my washer and dryer.
I mean, probably not. But the cool thing about this remote is that it's Matter compatible. And if you pair it with a SwitchBot hub, which our friend and colleague Jimmy Hawkins donated to my cause, then you can also use this remote to control Matter devices around your home. Now, that's pretty cool. That means you could connect it to lighting in your TV room, and you could connect it to maybe shades that you want to open and close in the space as well. So that's pretty powerful. I like that.
And the hub is required.
The hub is required to do that. The hub is not required just to hook it up to your TV or your audio system, depending on what you're running.
Okay. So, well, I just wanted to clarify that because the website, like the title page on their website says SwitchBot Universal Remote, in parentheses, hub required.
Not required.
Okay.
Not required. But for some devices, you do need the hub. Now, I don't need the hub. I'm just connecting to an LG TV, the most popular LG TV out there right now, the LG OLED that you and I have, and I'm connecting to an Apple TV. That's all I need to control. Yeah, it didn't have the LG TV that we have in its database.
Come on.
It didn't have my frame Samsung TV in its database. It didn't have any OLED TVs from either of those manufacturers in its database. It's unbelievable what this thing doesn't support. Now, what it does is it can control those things through HDMI-C. So I can power my TV and I can control the volume and I can control the mute with the remote through CEC because it's connected to the Apple TV. Now, when I bought this, it didn't even work with Apple TV. They rolled out a firmware update a couple of weeks after putting it out to make it work with the Apple TV. We were just talking about some other product that got rushed out to market too. So from the beginning, this was pretty crippled. It's getting a little bit better. Their Apple TV support, not great. It has a home button, like with a picture of a house on it that is mapped to the TV or home feature on the Apple remote. I don't know if you have an Apple TV or if you've seen the remote for it, but there's a button on the Apple TV that remote that looks like a TV. And you can program it to do a number of things. You can program it to go home. You can program it to go to the TV app, which is what I do. That's a really quick way to get into the dashboard of your various streaming things. Yeah, it doesn't do that. It goes back. So if you want to go home, you could do that. You go back. There's no way to go home directly. So luckily on the Apple TV, you're not allowed to do what Google TV and Roku and all these other devices let you do, which is build an app that doesn't let you get out without the home button. Like if you're on Peacock or Max on some of these other platforms, you can't actually edit exit the thing just by going back without pressing a home button.
Right.
Yeah, this home button doesn't work on Apple. So not a problem because Apple TV doesn't let developers do that. Now, how well does this work? It's connected by Bluetooth. You don't have to have line of sight. That's really nice. What I have found is that most of the third-party remotes that connect to the Apple TV with Bluetooth are slow. And this is no exception. So that means that you pick it up and you press a button and you wait about a second until it actually happens on the screen. But a second's a long time when you're using a remote control. So you probably think it didn't work and you press the button again. And now you probably just undid or double did what you were trying to do, which is usually not a good thing when you're using a streaming app. Oh, sometimes it actually sends double what you were trying to do. Like I just pressed the button in the center of the D-pad and it sends 2 of those. And that causes all kinds of problems too. That's not a good thing. And then you can't press and hold any of the buttons to do any of the press and hold moves that you might have on your remotes that you're emulating with this thing, because that doesn't work. It just sends the single command. So yeah, right now I say don't get this thing. It's not fully baked yet. They have a lot of work to do on it. Now, the good news is that they have gotten a lot of this feedback from people and they've been pretty candid about, okay, we know that we need to make improvements. We're working on it. That's part of why they got the Apple TV updates out so quickly, and they're getting firmware updates out pretty regularly. So maybe this will improve. But I look at it this way. I spent the $40 so you don't have to.
Man, that has been the common thread of all of the remotes you and I have tried.
Yeah.
They're all
here's another great thing. It has a screen on it, but it's a $40 remote, so it's not a touchscreen. And you'll want to touch it. I mean, you just expect that you should be able to touch it because it's a screen on a remote in 2024. And you can't. I mean, you can, but touching it doesn't do anything. And it has some programmable buttons that you can customize at the bottom of the screen. And they're cleverly designed to be black, the same color as the screen itself. So when you're looking at the remote in a dimly lit room watching television, you can't even really notice that there are buttons there. And so your inclination, again, because it's a screen, is to touch the text above where the button is, which doesn't do anything. And then I'm like, oh, right, I have to touch the button that looks like it's part of the screen underneath this. It's just, yeah, just don't. Somebody else, your turn.
It's so close. Like this thing has so much promise. Like I do love, like it has more smart home goodness to it than the Logitech Harmonies ever did.
Yep.
Like and even that like not touch screen that looks like a touch screen, like it's probably good enough.
Yeah.
But the button responsiveness, that's a non-starter. The not being able to hold, that's a non-starter. Yeah.
And it has to find my Apple TV every time I pick it up to use it.
Did you try it with anything? Like, did you try it with your Chromecast or anything like that to see if it was also slow and laggy and stuff like that?
I have not. In fairness, I have not. That's a good call. I could try that if it supports Chromecast. It only supports like 2 different streaming devices so far. Apple TV is one of them.
Okay.
So, yeah, hold off on this one. And they got the ergonomics really good too. Like it feels good. It's the right weight. The buttons are in the right place. Like there's so much about this that they got right, and then it just falls apart. Largely, not entirely, but largely because of software. So the good news is that can improve.
Yeah, for
They
sure.
could clarify the nearly invisible buttons underneath the screen by just putting little arrows under the text that is the name of the button. Just point to the button, reminding me that, yeah, press down there, not where the text is. Stuff like that. Like all of this can be fixed with software.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
All right. Wow. I went down a path there. Let's talk about what I've been watching. I was so excited that The Bear was on and I was keeping up with that and powered through that, got through the most recent season just in a week or two. Loved that. Saw the finale. Loved that show. This was a very different season than the last few, but still outstanding. They did a fantastic job with this. I want more. I don't know if there's going to be more. I want more because it's fantastic. Been watching a lot of YouTube videos, as I have in the past, about 3D printing and laser engraving and stuff like that. I have been watching Last Week Tonight because that's back from hiatus. The Boys season 4 started. It is so The Boys. It is so violent. It is so wrong. It is so a painful allegory telling our political story right now. It's just, it hits you over the head so often. It's annoying, but it's kind of fun. And so I'm watching through that. Snowpiercer is back. The lost last season, the season 4 that they filmed and never did anything with, is finally back on the air. And I'm watching that and enjoying that. I hate waiting each week for the next episode. I want to binge it all and I can't because it's actually on real TV.
What?
And yeah, I know, right? So I have to wait week after week for the next segment each time. I don't have to wait that long for Big Brother, though, because that's back and that's on 3 times a week. So I'm watching season 26 of Big Brother
3
on
times
Sundays,
a week.
Wednesdays, and Thursday nights.
Wow.
Yep. And hey, there's like this big thing happening now over across the pond. I've been watching all these sports for some reason, Josh. I never watched.
This is a lie. You don't watch sports. You're lying.
No, I totally am. So, again, I mentioned this earlier, just such a great experience with the Google TV 4-up view of the Olympics being able, I've hardly even gone into the Peacock app. In fact, I find the Peacock app a little too limiting because when you're streaming this stuff, you're watching one thing at a time and you have to deal with the ads and you can't skip around all that easily without going out and then finding something else and then going into that. So I am loving Google TV's 4-up, showing all the
YouTube
different
TVs.
YouTube TV's 4-up on my Google TV and on my Apple TV to watch this stuff. And also, I don't know I do know what a lot of people thought about it. Personally, I loved the opening ceremonies. I thought the opening ceremonies were a logistical feat never seen before, as they took the ceremonies out of the stadium and did it all across Paris. And I found it fascinating. I don't know how they pulled it off. It was pouring during most of it, and everybody just trudged on seemingly perfectly. So I thought it was really cool, and I have been thoroughly enjoying the Summer Olympics. And I usually don't care that much about the warm sports. So yeah. All right. I watched a couple movies we watched, they were all old, and I forget the other one that we watched that I didn't include in here, but This Means War, an older movie with Witherspoon, Tom Hardy, Chris Pine, and Wild Oats, Shirley MacLaine, and some other people that you would know, whose names I can't remember right now. Just some older movies that we came across, I think, in Amazon Prime. And we're like, hey, let's try this. This looks like it could be fun. So, and they were both enjoyable. Liked them both. Hey, a bunch of stuff has been happening in politics. Have you noticed, Josh?
What? Really?
Yeah. So, since the last time we spoke, there's been, holy crap, an assassination attempt. There's been a whole change in roster on one party's side, and kind of a new interest and energy in the political sphere everywhere. And I think that's only good. If more people are paying attention, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Period.
But hey, let's do it nicely, huh? We don't need to be trying to get rid of people. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. We don't need to be shooting at politicians. I think we can all agree on that.
Good grief. Anyway, lots of political news. And I mentioned before that I was listening to this book Fluke, and I just gave up on it. I tried another chapter or two, and I just couldn't keep up with it. So I'm curious to find out what the new book club book is going to be, because I missed today's book club because I didn't read it. All right, that's it. That's me. How about you, Josh?
Okay. Not a whole lot of exciting stuff on the gaming side. Occasional Minecraft with my daughter, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, now that is on Game Pass, playing a fair amount of that. Maybe I will briefly talk about one mode there. So one mode that the group of guys that I play with regularly that we used to love, like year and a half, 2 years ago in Call of Duty, it was a mode called DMZ, where it was not a bunch of PvP stuff. You're playing against bots. It's jump in, have a couple of short objectives, get out. And you could just jump in with your friends, not have to put too much thought into it, and just have fun, not getting wrecked by all the people who are really good at Call of Duty. And then they kind of got rid of the mode. And then the other problem was that it was always 3 players, and I play with 3 other guys. If you're not a math whiz, that's 4 people. So we couldn't all play it together. So it disappeared. And then what we discovered is they brought it back in Modern Warfare 3, but not with the same name. It's not DMZ anymore. Probably because they didn't want anybody thinking, they didn't want anybody to confuse it with the best website on the internet for keeping up with the latest consumer entertainment technology.
Oh, right. The
Obviously.
DMZ.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Over at thedigitalmediazone.com. Right. So instead, they put zombies in it and made it the zombies mode. So we decided to try that out this weekend. It has the same 3-player limitation, which is absolutely idiotic, because there can be, there are other squads, other 3-player squads in the map that if you come across, it's not PvP, you can work together. So I don't know, why not just let me have 4 people in my party? But they don't. But if you can get past the 3-player limitation, we really like it. I just really wish all 4 of us could play together, but we can't, and it's probably not going to change. All right, that's it for the gaming stuff. Everything else is boring. It's the stuff I always play: NHL, Forza, all of that. In terms of what I'm watching, no new movies this week. We have also been watching the Olympics. I am discovering that I like the Summer Olympics more than I thought I did.
Yeah.
There's more to it that I like than I used to admit. I do really like soccer. The family loves gymnastics, and when you're living in a country that dominates a sport, it does make it more interesting to watch. So, we watched a lot of women's gymnastics. We, the other night, turned on women's skateboarding. That was cool. That's fun. That's really
That's
fun.
very cool. I was watching that last night.
The family gets into diving. I could not care less about diving.
I like that.
The track and field stuff can be fun. Like the US comeback in the 1500 meter yesterday. Oh, that was a highlight that I had to bring up for the family. I saw it on Twitter and I'm like, you have to watch this. It is so good.
That was amazing.
You know, rewatching Katie Ledecky's like absolute obliteration of people in the 1500 meter freestyle. Like, so yeah, apparently I like Summer Olympics more than I thought. The opening ceremonies, no clue. Don't watch those. Don't watch the opening ceremonies. Don't watch the closing ceremonies. You know why, Richard? There's no sports in the opening ceremonies.
So, funny story. At work, one of the things that someone asked on Slack was, the Olympics are starting. What's your favorite event of the Olympics? And I responded saying, all right, I'm going to give the gayest answer ever. The opening ceremonies. So, I do. I always enjoy them. I enjoy the spectacle. I enjoy the production. I usually enjoy the music. I like looking for the things that went wrong. I do think they screwed up the lighting of the rings this year.
Whoops.
But yeah, it seems like that always gets screwed up for some reason. I don't know why that is. It's such a pivotal thing. But, also I learned that the Olympic anthem is way too long, just way too long. Good grief. It sounds like someone wrote it 150 years ago, at probably closer to 100, and it's just way too long.
You get around that by not watching the opening ceremonies.
But, yeah, fair point. Okay, but is that all you've been watching?
So I don't know. I have no idea how Jen became interested in this, but she sat down on her own and watched the pilot for Designated Survivor and really liked it. And she was like, we should watch this together. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It is a drama. Why are you watching the show? You don't like stressful shows. And she's like, I don't know. I like this. So we've watched two or three episodes so far. And yeah, I like it. It's good. Like it's a little obvious at the beginning. It feels like, like I'm only 2 or 3 episodes in, but it's just like, oh, they found an unexploded bomb. Yeah, that's for sure planted. Like they for sure didn't, like it's stuff like that. It's like, it doesn't really require that much thought to guess where it's going. I'm thinking the plot is going to get more interesting than that. But overall, it's been fun is probably not the right word. It's been an entertaining show to watch.
I thoroughly enjoyed that show. I was disappointed that they ended up ending it. I feel like they gave it a reasonable ending for the time that they had to wrap it up. So, you can feel like you're watching it and you're not going to just be screwed at the end.
That's good.
Yeah.
So here's my big concern, and I'll ask this question in a way that doesn't feel super spoilery, but it seems like they're setting it up so that in a few seasons, it's going to be a season that's entirely focused on this guy running for re-election versus who I think would probably be the candidate running against him, and that will be the last season, and it will be terrible, just like how The West Wing ended.
It's not that clean.
Okay.
I watch it. I see it come up all the time, and I'm half tempted to watch it again.
Wow.
And I have a lot of new stuff that I want to watch, let alone rewatch things.
Right.
But I thought it was cool and enjoyable, and I like political intrigue thing.
Yeah.
So yeah. Good pick.
Yeah. I'm going to have to find out where she got that recommendation because it's been a good one. All right. And then lastly, books. I mentioned last week that I had started Upgrade by Blake Crouch. I finished it. I really, really love this book. Apparently, I'm a really big Blake Crouch fan. He writes really good science. I mean, I guess it's technically science fiction, but it's not like, in outer space and stuff like that. It's more modern or recent future stuff. And I've loved every book of his. I've never been like a particular fan of a particular author or anything like that, because I feel like I'm still kind of new to reading for pleasure in the last few years. I'm becoming like a diehard Blake Crouch fan, it seems. His stuff is just really good. It's really good. And that's it for what's going on in my entertainment center. So, Richard, you've been doing something else?
Yeah, moonlighting a little bit, I guess. So I had the pleasure of joining my friend Ken Ray on the Mac Observer YouTube show. He had me on to talk about the state of the smart home. So that'll be coming out on Friday of this week. It's available on YouTube on the Mac Observer channel, and it's also available as a podcast. So if you're curious where my head is these days in terms of what's going on in the smart home at the bigger level, not just specifically looking at brands and devices, then check that out.
Cool. Very cool. That, he puts together a pretty great show. So
he does indeed.
Congrats being on it. So,
yeah, nice. Thanks.
Well, if you would like to get a hold of us, there's a lot of ways you can do that. I'm on Twitter at Josh Pollard. So is the website at DigiMediaZone. Richard and I are both on Mastodon. He's Richard Gunther. I'm Josh Pollard. And then we typically do this show live Tuesdays or Wednesdays, whichever night we actually record, around 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And then, of course, we take these live videos and we throw them up on YouTube also. So do us a favor, head on over to YouTube, watch the video. The intro tonight, very funny. You should definitely go and check that out and click that subscribe button while you're there. But that's going to do it for episode 655. He's Richard Gunther, and I'm Josh Pollard. Thanks for listening to Entertainment 2.0. Adios.
Goodbye.